we even get to all of that. So for those of you who check out my daily schedule, I post up my schedule for the week in two different spots. I post it up on the community tab of my YouTube channel here, DSP Gaming, every single day. And then I also post it up on my Twitter at They Call Me DSP. Alright, and what's happened is, in the last year, as you guys know, I turned my pre-stream, which essentially just was me playing some music and then chatting with you guys when ads used to run on the screen. If you remember, the pre-stream used to look like this. This was it. You would just stare at a bunch of pre-stream rolls. You know, it wasn't me on camera. And we discussed the schedule, and we went back and forth a little bit, and I did some shout-outs. But for the most part, it was very impersonal, right? And so a year ago, it was actually in November of 2021, I took your feedback to heart. You said, Phil, if you're going to be doing this every day, instead of doing this, why not do this? Why not actually turn it into a show where you're directly talking with us every day? So that way it becomes a piece of content for you. It helps you diversify your content, because there may be people who come by just for your podcast every day, as opposed to people who are coming by for the gameplay every day. There may be a whole new audience, or maybe an audience that comes for the podcast, and every once in a while they'll stick around for the gameplay. And I was like, you know what? Oh, that makes sense. So I changed. For the better, I feel, right? For 1 year now, I've been doing a podcast. At first, it was called the Pre-Stream Podcast, and then, you know, sometime earlier this year, we came in with the idea that we'll call it the Level 1 Podcast, right? Which was a great idea, I feel. You know, I'm glad that we came up with that. Thanks, Keemstar. And it's been good ever since, you know. We're rolling with it. It works. But the thing is, I've never really formally said anywhere, hey, guys, you know, the podcast starts at so-and-so, and gameplay starts at so-and-so, all right? I'll be honest, yeah, I've kind of misrepresented what the first stream really is. I would say things like, for example, I would say, hey, today we're playing the Callisto Protocol on the first stream starting at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. That's completely false. All right? It just is. I'm not starting with Callisto Protocol now. This is the podcast, right? The stream turns on at 10:45 a.m., correct? Correct. Then it runs some music for about maybe 15, 20 minutes to get people to join, and then we start with the podcast. And the podcast runs from roughly, you know, 11:05, 11:10, all the way till around 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. And this is, every day it's like this, you know. I try to time it that way, so the podcast is just roughly a little over an hour long. And recently, if you haven't noticed, I made a concerted effort to try to end this podcast by 12:30. I don't want this podcast running insanely long unless there's a really, really good reason for it. I feel like by 12:30 p.m., we should be ending the show. I should be switching over to the gameplay. If I need to use the restroom or do something quickly before we start, I do it. So then, by roughly, let's say 12:45 p.m. Pacific time, we are into the game that I'm playing for that first stream. And then typically what I've been doing is, you know, I either play an hour and then I take a break, or I play 2 hours and I take a break, and the break's around 15 to 20 minutes long, and then we do a final hour. So each day, the first stream is about 20 minutes of, you know, intro music, the podcast, a brief break, 1 to 2 hours of gameplay, another brief break, and then a final hour of gameplay. All right, that's how we break down the first stream every day. But my schedule has been misrepresenting this for a year. My schedule has basically been saying the game starts at 10:45 a.m. And that's wrong. And I think what's happened is you get people who come by, they trust the schedule, right? And they come by and they're like, where's the game? And then they complain, when does he start the game? Where's the game? His schedule says this was the game. And you know what? My fault. I will 100% take the responsibility for that. A year ago, when I changed the pre-stream to the podcast, I never really redid my schedule. And it took me a whole year to kind of realize that schedule is not representative whatsoever of what the truth is. And so you may have people who are coming every day to the streams. They're like, what's going on? Now, Jasper, careful. He's pulling the wires. I don't want you to knock my controller down. That would not be good. There we go. I don't want people to have the wrong impression, come to the podcast and be like, oh, I came for gameplay. It looks like he's not playing, and he'll just leave. So moving forward, when I post up my schedule, all right, both on the main channel page of DSP Gaming on the community tab, as well on Twitter, all right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to be sure to break it down into 3 different segments. The podcast segment, the Level 1 podcast, will say it starts at 10:45 a.m. Pacific time. Then the gameplay will be starting at 12:45 p.m. Pacific time. So it will outright call that out. If you just want to come here for the gameplay, come around 12:45 p.m. Pacific time. That's about the time every day that we start with gameplay. All right? And then, there's also the late stream, and the late stream starts at 6:45 p.m. Pacific time. And honestly, we don't really do any kind of a podcast or real pre-stream for that. I run a little bit of music, and usually we jump right into the game. So in that case, I feel like the schedule has been accurate. It's just the first stream that's kind of been inaccurate. All right? So there you go. That's what we're going to do moving forward. And I hope this makes more sense. And I hope that you guys think that this is better. I hope, really. I mean, I understand that some people got turned off in the last year. I don't understand. It says he's starting a game. There's no game. What the hell is he doing? Now, the good news is in the last year, there's been a significant amount of people who've grown to love the Level 1 podcast. People who come by, and a lot of times they're here just for the podcast. They're like, I'm not interested in the game you're playing on this stream, but I'll hang out for the podcast, chill with you, and then we'll come, later on or whatever. And, that's cool. That's really cool. So, that being said, thank you for understanding, and thanks. I forget who it was, because someone did actually call it out recently in, the last week. They were like, your schedule isn't really representative of what you do. And I looked at it last night, and all of a sudden it dawned on me. I was like, they're absolutely right. Yeah, this schedule's wrong. I should fix it. So in the spirit of the season, I listen to your feedback. That's right. There's one day a year that I listen to your feedback. And I said, all right, let's fix it. And I did. All right, so the schedule should now be correct moving forward. Okay, more representative.